Hi, today we're going to go over a way to have Light 2Ds set up to where you can only see the lit up areas if the character has line of sight to the lit area. This tutorial is done in Godot 4 Beta 2, so there's some visual glitches in the editor itself. For example, the in-editor preview doesn't work most of the time, but the game itself shows up properly. This is what it looks like as it runs. You can see over here the debug views for the map itself, as well as the mask for the visibility, where you'll see black is where you can see and white where you cannot. When I move over here, for example, you can see the lit area extends out into the main room here, but you can't see the light itself, and you just see a little sliver of the lit area in the room until you go into the doorway, and then you get more visibility in the room itself. The torches are actually only on the lit layer, so you'll notice they disappear as you go around. This is just an artifact with how I set up the occlusion on the tile maps. It's not a bug in the issue. It's basically set up. I set the occlusion layers up so you can see part of the tile there. For the barrels, you can notice the shadow that stays the same here is the shadow cast from the light, and then this is just the visibility. If I actually turn off this background layer, you can just see black where you can't see. This dimmer view, for example, would be a good thing for something like Fog of War, where you can potentially, in other code, build it up as you can see it. The masking here is done by having a viewport for the actual lit area, as well as a viewport for the mask. And then you have a sprite that essentially uses a shader material to mask the one viewport texture onto the other. Each of these viewports needs to be the same size as the main viewport, which you'll probably need to do through code just to sync it on resize. It also needs to make sure to have transparency turned on, and a very important part is having render target set update to always. That way the viewports will actually update every frame instead of just once or never. Let's see. Each of these viewports has a copy of the same tile map. There's a tile map here, which is the dimmed one to show the fog of war or just the background. This tile map itself has a, let me turn that off, has a modulate of I just did 20-20-20 because it shows it decently but doesn't hide it altogether. The visibility test has another tile map. This one actually has a shader that sets the entire canvas to just white. Because essentially what we're going to do is we have all white pixels, and then we cast a shadow on it with the light. The light in here is a point light 2D with a gradient texture that's set to that has a radial fill in the middle. It's about 512 pixels. That's essentially the extent of the player's view. I set it to a constant interpolation just so it's a single white value, so you just get a solid white, solid black, so it's very easy to interpolate there. You could potentially have this be a regular gradient and then have the alpha on the other shader, which I'll get to later, adjust, basically be a reversed alpha. This is just a copy of the same map. And then the lit view itself, I set up as another scene just to make this clearer. This just has a third copy of the map, as well as each of the torches and each of the point lights that lights up the actual scene. It also has a canvas modulator set to the same 20-20-20, which is just the base background shadow value. If I go back into the light mask tutorial, I go into the player. The player has a script attached to it where it's a regular character body 2D, just able to move around. The important part here is the linked position node. This is linked to the visibility light in the visibility test map, and I just update the position of that light whenever the player moves. That way the visibility moves around with the player. The light map tutorial, that just updates the camera position to player position, quits, and turns on and off the, background tile map. Let's see. All right, and then here's where the actual magic happens. This is the masked lit view. This is just a sprite with a texture, a viewport texture pointing to lit view. Notice, in order to use a viewport texture, you have to make sure to turn local to scene on for the texture. Godot will warn you if you don't do that. So it's pretty easy to remember to do that. And then this sprite has another shader material that has a uniform sampler 2D, which that just means we're taking in a second texture to process along with the main texture. The texture that's attached to this is another viewport texture. Again, notice the local to scene, and that's just pointing to the visibility test texture. You pull out the main color, which is the color of the lit view. You pull out the color of the mask at the same spot. And the UV is the same spot. If the mask, any of the channels, I just picked red as an example here, is greater than half, I set the color, the alpha, to 0. So it essentially just cuts off that part of the map. See, I will have this code uploaded to GitHub with a link in the description for if you want to check it out yourself. If you know of a better way to do this, please let me know. And if you like it, please let me know. Thank you very much for watching.